Let me quickly cut across and bring into this conversation Ambassador Rakesh Sood, India's former ambassador to Nepal. Ambassador Sood, how would you assess the situation in Nepal today? Is this power vacuum worrisome?
I think it is extremely worrisome because right now, the methodology that we are looking at in terms of an interim government and so on, dissolution of parliament, interim government, this is outside the constitution of Nepal. The constitution of Nepal calls for fresh election. If no government can be formed with the existing parliament, and if members of parliament are resigning, so then there have to be fresh elections within 6 months, and there is the provision of a caretaker government. The caretaker
Yes.
government, well, if Prime Minister Oli is now incommunicado, as we see, and but there is actually no provision for an interim government of the kind that we are looking at. Also, there are talks of a large number of constitutional amendments. So therefore, we are not very clear as to what is going to happen. And then
In fact,
uh,
go on, sir.
finally, it is a good thing that the president has today spoken. I mean,
Yes.
I would have thought that the president, particularly after the resignation by Prime Minister Oli, should have addressed the nation. But instead of that, it was the army chief who was addressing the nation, which is very peculiar.
And
And I
all these
found that a
developments,
little
clearly,
strange.
you are absolutely right. And look at the manner in which symbols of authority, symbols of state have been destroyed, burnt to the ground in Nepal. The army, as of now, is the maintaining, authority, the authority that's maintaining law and order. But what is your reading of names of Sushila Karki or Kulman Ghee Singh and Balen Shah that are doing the rounds as per Nepal's existing constitution? Can they be made head of an interim establishment, and
Well,
how will they govern?
these are all names that are doing the rounds, but Valensha, for example, came as an outsider in 2022 when he stood for election as an independent. He doesn't have a political party and so on. The other new political party that came out of nowhere in 2022 was RSP, which was
Yes.
led by Ravi Lamichhane, who was a television personality. But then Ravi Lamichhane rose to the top. He became deputy prime minister and home minister, but then got involved in a cooperative scandal worth thousands of crores. And he was in jail actually when during this whole chaos and things like that. There are about various jails have been opened up, and more than 13,000 prisoners have just gone out, including Ravi Lamichhane.
Yes.
So we don't know what these people want. Or now there are three old established parties like the Nepali Congress, the UML, and the Maoists.
Yes.
They even today constitute about 75-80% of the strength of the parliament.
And all of them
And
have been targeted.
what they've been doing is that they have been playing this game of musical chairs between their leaderships and so on for a long time. So, which is why this resentment has been building up.
And in your view,
And
what then happens to leaders like KP Sharma Oli or Sher Bahadur
no, no,
Deuba or Pushpakamal Dahal, Prachand?
I don't think that any of them have a future in politics in Nepal. Neither Prachanda, nor Oli, nor deuba. Those names are out. In fact, many of those other names like Koirala and so on, the familiar names that we know in Nepali politics, which have been there for a long time. I think those names are over. In fact, it's interesting. We don't look at it, but by the end of this year, there were supposed to be annual general conventions for all three major political parties. Prachanda was being challenged by two young leaders from his own party because Prachanda has been heading that party as general secretary since 1989.
Yes.
And they wanted to put term limits. And there was a proposal that was put up, and it is kind of, but there are murmurs of discontent. Oli
And the
was
current
being
vacuum, sir?
challenged.
Yes.
Oli was being challenged by none other than the former president Vidya Devi Bhandari, who
Yes.
was a member of his own party and who retired 2 years ago as president. But obviously, the party discontented elements appealed to her and she was ready to re enter politics. Oli was trying to prevent her from re entering politics. In Nepali Congress, Deuba was trying to postpone the general convention. In Nepali Congress, there's a limit, and Deuba had crossed that limit of how long he could continue to chair the party. But he was trying very hard to postpone his general convention to beyond 2027 because he wanted to be able to distribute the tickets for the next general election. So,
Hmm.
in each of these parties, there were rumblings of discontent, just as there were rumblings of discontent in the youth, just as
And
there
we
were
saw
rumblings
that.
of discontent in rural areas. But
And we saw the
now
manner in
it
which all
is
of that came out. But, Ambassador,
correct.
is this worrisome for India? Is this vacuum, is there's an apprehension that hostile neighbors could exploit this situation, and especially our hostile neighbor to the west, if not the north?
I don't think that as long as we are so far, I think the best thing that has happened is that nobody seems to have whenever there is a disturbance in Nepal, someone on the other comes up with a foreign hand and that finger always points at India. Now,
Yes.
I think that this time we've been fortunate, nobody has done that, at least so far. And partly it is because we have refrained from getting involved in any kind of uh, local political involvement. So, which is a good thing. And
Hmm.
I think we should let the Nepalese sort it out. Meanwhile, we should always, I mean, we always have to monitor the developments very closely to see who is the beneficiary. Now, there are all kinds of conspiracy theories, by the way, going on in Nepal as to
Yes.
whether some foreign powers are behind it and things like that. So far, I don't see any evidence of any foreign powers behind it. I think this is a homegrown thing. But when you have a leaderless, organic kind of a movement like this, there are people who would like to fish in troubled waters. And
Oh,
that is what
absolutely.
we have to look out for.
And Nepal has seen many of these Jan Andolans in the past decades, right from 1990s through 2006 and now. But Ambassador, some of these protesters have access to assault rifles and grenades. There are reports of armories being looted. You mentioned 13,000 prisoners out on the loose now. Does this make a very lethal and dangerous cocktail, not just for Nepal, but even for India?
Well, to that extent, I think the government has already sealed the border. And partly we are also conscious because there are 7 bordering districts in Bihar, ranging from western Champaran all the way to Kishanganj and so on. So, and these, there is a frequent exchange of people, trade, communication, and a close relationship between the people on both sides of the border, whether it is the Bhojpuri connection, the Maithili connection, and so on. So that we've seen, and to that extent, and in fact, today I saw reports indicating that the SSB, the Sashastra Seema Bal, which is the border, which mans the border between India and Nepal, they actually got a couple of 2 dozen prisoners who were trying to escape, who had
Yes.
escaped out of Kathmandu jails or Nepali jails, and they were trying to get into India. But they were apprehended and they were then handed back. So obviously, if it was, we don't want to run the risk of having a porous border at this time when there's so much uncertainty in Nepal.